I'm Alfonso Jones.
I'm Michael Spropoulos.
And I'm Peter Josephs.
And this is the ultimate Drumcast. And that song was You Rang, played by Dave Weckl, one of my favorite drummers. I know we've all grown up listening to endless recordings. I still remember the first time I heard the Electric Band album. You know, just kind of fell over. I would sit in my room playing the thing all night. What a freak of nature Dave Weckl is. Just smooth. One of the best players I've ever heard in my life. So inspirational.
His bass player, Tom Kennedy, was the bass instructor at my school. So I got to split my drum lessons between my drum instructor and Tom Kennedy. And with that, like, I got held by the standards of Dave Weckl in learning, but then also, like, whenever Dave was in town, I got to sit like under him and just kind of like glean knowledge. Wow. Like when they were just like being front row and seeing him just like the way he approached things and, you know, question like his ergonomic way of setting up and stuff like that. So it was just a life-changing experience, like just to see the influence in person.
Yeah, and he was always kind of cutting edge with how he did everything, like the way it's, you know, one of the first guys that came out using like 8 and 12 rack toms and, you know, just smaller stuff. And yeah, you'd always see he'd make all these slight tweaks in his gear. And he always it's just everything he does is just so smooth.
Yeah, but because he thinks of like every motion and like everything is set to maximize every motion that he like moves to. So it's just like, when you think like that, you have no other choice but to be smooth because you've catered drum kit to like move with
exactly,
you,
yeah.
You know, so
everything looks like it's on a little bit of a ramp.
Yeah,
and it's beautiful
because it's the natural arc of the body when you're moving.
Exactly,
so like that type of stuff, that type of thinking, like just I never thought about my setup until I like watching him and like learning that from him.
Yeah, you know, that's the truth, and we all notice that now, you know, because especially like when I grew up, it was always about massive drum kits and everything set up 8 feet away from you and, you know, just being tweaked. And we've all seen that over the years. It's like through refinement. And it used to be an age thing, and now it really isn't. Now it's just understanding that it's really a smarter way to do things.
Oh, not only age thing too, but the limitations of drums. Like the smaller tom sizes were not available. So they had to set up big, huge drum kits. But like now that they have like the fast tom sizes, like you can get like super low and be comfortable. Like you're sitting on your couch.
Yeah, exactly.
And his sound was always it's always like so spot on too. You know, you could always listen, just the way, little tweaks he do with the snare drums, the toms, you know, it just always kind of always right on the edge.
He introduced me to like the May miking system. Cause like
really?
All of his drums have the internal mics. He literally travels with a Yamaha mixer that has his presets in it, and he just literally like sets up, and they just take 2 lines to the front of the house, and he has his whole setup just ready to go. So he sounds consistent everywhere he goes.
Oh,
so
God,
that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
At the end of the day, Weckl is an audio engineer and producer as well. I know the one masterclass I've taken with him, he spent an hour talking about frequencies and what 1K does to a snare drum.
Yeah,
and that kind of nitpickiness allows him to really craft his own sound, like because he carries his mixer, and I've never seen him without it.
Yeah, that is true because the thing's like
it's right.
Yeah, and he's always like in the middle of his solos, going in, tweaking things, just like it's beautiful.
I always really like his snare drums, because they always have that attack with that warmth. You know, it seems like he's always got that sound. It is always just perfect.
His tuning is amazing, like because they're open. So even the resonance of the drum is it's a tone, and it's the most consistent tone ever. But it's musical, so like every drum just sings. So that's what I love about like listening to Dave Weckl, because it's not only just like technically pleasing, but it's sonically pleasing.
It's overall just beautiful.
Yeah.
And that was Fred from Tony Williams, one of his legendary, most popular songs, played extremely well. Fireman here, Alfonso.
Very well.
Man, that was that record was one of the first 3 records, like CDs, that I bought when I first went to New York. It was Pick Hits Live by John Schofield, Jumpstart in Jazz by Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, and then Lifetime by Tony Williams. And then like being able to play that song is just, you know, one, it's a full circle. It's full circle because that record was so inspirational to me, like going into college, and then being able to play it with my own voice that has such a big Tony Williams influence, you know, and like just being a melting pot of all those influences and like being able to express that today on that song, you know.
Such an incredible era of just, you know, the drummers and, you know, like Tony Williams just in every step, just always being like, on the, I hate to use the word cutting edge. It almost sounds weird, but he was always on the cusp of everything. He's
literally the father of fusion drumming.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah.
He literally like created that style of drumming that spawned so many drummers coming after that. So thank you, Tony Williams.
And even before that, with Miles and everything, he was at the cutting edge of jazz.
Yeah.
And it's, oh my God.
Because he was so known for his ride cymbal pattern.
Exactly.
So it's
like 4 and More is just it's a study in cymbals.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love that record, man. I'm never going to stop loving that. But
and to drive a whole band with just your ride cymbal.
Exactly.
Like, it's such a...
Like, there's times he's just playing, like, 2 ride cymbal hits a bar. Like, at the start of So What, he's just playing...
But it feels good.
It feels amazing.
It just feels good.
Yeah. But yeah.
He's definitely like, and he's another one of those guys that just has like an influence in everything to where he is a standard bearer in like influences. Who's your influences? Tony Williams.
Tony Williams. I mean, how quickly does it take to identify that yellow Gretsch kit? You know what I mean? Is there a question? You see a yellow Gretsch kit, black dot heads,
right?
3 floor top. You're just like, oh, black dot snare drum head. I mean, Tony right there.
You already know what it's gonna sound like.
Yeah.
You know it's gonna sound like, and it was the sound of like that era.
And it was that power. Like when did you'd sit down, you'd come when things were still considered, kind of dainty playing, small kits, especially if you play jazz. What are you doing with all these drums? And then you'd sit down in the jazz showcase, and you could just imagine like the first time someone went into the Tony Williams fusion era, walking in this room, seeing this massive drum kit, in this little club, and then a guy sit down and just destroy it. Because he played with so much, as much finesse and beauty as anybody could. But then he was like, "This is what I'm,"
And he didn't look like he could.
No.
Exactly.
He was like he was a not dainty, but like he was just like he was fit.
Yeah,
exactly.
But he wasn't like a huge guy. But when he hit those drums, he sounded like a huge guy.
Yeah, it was just and you just listen to that stuff over and over and over, and it just doesn't get old.
But his technique was so good that he didn't look like he was hitting hard.
Exactly.
He was chilling.
Yeah.
But it sounded huge. And that's the goal that we all should strive for, like in our playing, is just like having such great technique that we don't have to work hard. We just get a good sound, So it's like having the great drums, having the technique, and like that's half the battle. Now you don't have to play hard, and you can play drums for the rest of your life,
right?
Like he did.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Like he did, and we all get inducted into the Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
And even in the days of like, as far as the sound and how identifiable it was, now that you have these unlimited videos you could see from that era, you're going through all these black and whites, and you could almost tell, or not almost, because you could, when you get that black and white, whether you knew Tony Williams was playing that drum kit or not, all of a sudden you heard that Gretsch sound. That because everything else, whether it was a Ludwig or a Rogers kit or this or a Slingerland, that they all kind of sounded the same. Let's just be honest about it. They really all did. Yeah. You couldn't tell the difference. Was Buddy playing this drum kit, or this drum kit? Who knows? But when that video came out and Tony was out there, and we're talking black and white era and, room mics and that's it, you'd hear that tom and it sounds like stuff that you'd hear now.
Yeah,
exactly.
A whole different thing to it, and it's just, no one told him to do that. That was just, that's just, I guess, part of what made him so, just unbelievable.
It feels good. When you got that tuning, you got that right tuning when it just feels good. And that record Lifetime though is so influential into fusion drumming. Like you can literally tie all of the fusion drummers to that record. Like everyone has something from that record.
Yeah, exactly. So many influences from it, and that's a wild thing. Like you said, like as Tony, that's just how he played. He just said, "This is it. This is just how this is what's coming out of me." It wasn't like planned licks, because it seems like sometimes there's a lot of that where, it seems like these drummers that they got a whole vocabulary of new modern day rudiments. Yeah. And that's great and all, but you know what I mean? It's like, it's kind of contrived sometimes, and you don't even necessarily want to hear where anything that comes out of Tony, regardless of what it was, half the time it's that edge you play it with, though, isn't it? It's just that approach and that attack, and it's like the way you'll hit a tom. Even if it's just a flam on that tom, it's just like some guys just.
Yeah, and there's all the conversation with who he's playing with too. Like everything he plays is literally a musical response to everything that is happening around him. So that's why you can never hear him literally play the same thing over and over again, because he's literally just constantly communicating with everybody in his band and in the bands that he's in. So like just having that mentality to just constantly create and constantly push yourself, because you can hear it in the recordings where everything's not quite perfect because everyone's just going for it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's no fear. It's just like this is what we're gonna do. Like let's just go. Let's play.
Jazz.
Yes.
Let's just do it.
And like not caring about what people think.
That's the best part of it.
That's the fun part about it.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, just going out and with your conviction, and you just know.
Like this is for me. I don't care how you feel about it, but you're gonna feel something.
You're gonna like it, or maybe not. Yeah, but you're gonna feel it.
You're gonna feel it.
And that's what it really is all about. 100%. All right, well, you know what? This was a great segment, great conversation. And you know what? I think it's time that we actually listen to Alfonso. What do you say? You want to give this song a shot here?
Let's do it. I'll do my best.
All right, let's do it. All right, so this is Fred by Tony Williams, played by the one and only Alfonso Jones.
John Bonham. What can we say that has not already been said? Like, he is John Bonham. He's a sound. He's the drummer.
Yes.
What do you guys think?
When you hear John Bonham, you certainly know it. And yeah, like he's one of those guys like we were talking about with Tony Williams. Like when you see that drum set, you identify it immediately.
Yep.
And yeah, the sound, everything. You know, interesting stuff that I found about it though. You know, I've been listening to a lot of Led Zeppelin stuff lately with all this, you know, kind of actually learning some songs here and there of Zeppelin stuff. And I never got too deeply into them growing up. You know, they were always on the radio and stuff, and I liked them and everything, but, you know, never huge on them. So when I started listening again, I found it really interesting because, you know, John Bonham, in a big sense, a lot of people look at him as this like really like heavy slamming, kind of almost like metal drummer in a way. It's all about big and raucousy and this and that. And I kind of noticed in listening to all his albums that, you know, I really think it was kind of the opposite of that. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. You know, the man could play. He'd get energy and he'd hit the drums like any drummer should.
Yeah.
Inappropriate, right? I mean, the guy could play, but he wasn't that kind of, you know, what we think about is like the slammer, the metal kind of kill it, the drums guy. He really, to me, was like a funk, R&B drummer that just was in this band and played to this kind of style. And that was probably the most interesting thing I found in listening to that stuff and going is that he was really just a really true funk drummer. And really the big stuff wasn't about like Moby Dick and the big drum solos. Like the stuff that really made him great and his great drumming was all in that pocket stuff. You know, really
The feel.
yeah, and all those early influences he had to have, and you know that sound is really probably, you know, the biggest thing too, you know, because I mean, when you hear the Bonham recordings, like what do you hear?
Well, I do want to preface saying, if you asked me 5 years ago, I would have a completely different answer because since then I've just taken a huge undertaking in studying like styles of music that aren't rock, because if you just know rock, you're not going to fully understand Bonham for what he is, because you need to take the time to perceive the history that has occurred before Bonham. Yeah. So I hear a little bit of swing. I hear some Motown grooves. I hear this soul and pocket that you hear in almost a Stevie Wonder song, but in a completely different fashion. And it's a really interesting thing hearing that with Led Zeppelin once I've gotten to the point to be able to perceive that.
Yeah.
But he plays it with such an intensity that it's able to be labeled as rock, which is a very important thing.
Yeah, and the finesse that he plays that stuff with too is what's contributing to that groove. That's what makes Bonham is how the little notes in between the bashing, you know, it's that's what makes it like it's so precise with the equipment that he had with the Speed King pedals. Like, how can you play?
How did you do that?
If anybody has touched the Speed King pedal, like that's a feat in itself.
Yeah,
like they are just not the easiest pedals to play. But like one thing I like about Bonham too is just not just drums. He's a percussionist too.
Exactly.
So like being able to be a musician, you know, and play what the music is calling for, you know, that type of stuff. Because like the timpani, the signature timpani and gong setup, you know, like that type of stuff. You don't like he started that.
Exactly.
I would say he's one of the founders of the side percussion tables.
Yeah, and that big wide open sound, you know, like all the drums being open and, you know, not that 70s pillow in every tom thing
Super
and just
dead.
super dead, just thump. I mean, his drums were alive. And, you know, and I think that probably does go in a little why people thought, oh, he slammed so hard because the sound was big, right? But that was his feel, his touch on the drums.
He didn't have to hit hard.
He didn't. The sound was there. Plus, you know, the recording techniques being almost archaic, really, right?
I mean, you know, when the levee breaks, the whole story behind that, he recorded at the bottom of a stairwell and all the mics were placed at the top. So you have like a 2-story reverb chamber, and that just makes the Bonham sound. Yep. The Led Zeppelin sound is so huge because of the recording techniques. And in addition to the techniques Bonham used for his own drum sound, which I'm sure you can go more into.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Black dots on the Black Dot Remos, you know, it's the sound of the 70s.
Exactly.
Know? And like the Versalites and that head just go hand in hand now. Like you can't really play, you know, that Versalite kit without black dots.
Exactly.
Like you could try it, but
it sounds silly.
It sounds silly.
Yeah.
The black dots just bring the right amount of everything. It's the right amount of juices, the right amount of, you know, flavor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
It's the right amount of flavor.
Yeah, man.
Okay, well, Are you ready?
Yeah.
All righty. Well, Peter here is going to come out. He's going to play